So there's a new Blur documentary coming out soon called To The End that showcases the making of their most recent album, The Ballad of Darren, and I unfortunately cannot see it in theaters because I am but an American. But hey, that's what internet piracy is for, am I right? For legal reasons, this is a joke. But it did get me thinking about how monumental of an album The Ballad of Darren was for me. I mean, I remember how excited I was when they first announced it and released the first single, The Narcissist, especially since this was the first thing the band had done together in literally 8 years since The Magic Whip. And dude, I literally listened to The Narcissist like 20 times that day, and I'm not even kidding. And when the entire thing eventually came out, I absolutely loved it, and it ended up soundtracking that entire summer for me. But somehow, it became one of those albums that grew on me over time, which is weird to say because I liked it on first listen, but as the months went on, I found more and more to appreciate about the album, especially when it came to the lyrics, and it went from being an album I really liked to one of my favorite albums of all time. The Ballad of Darren has become my second favorite Blur album, right behind Park Life, and true, it was hard to put it above classics like 13 and Modern Life is Rubbish, but this album has emotionally affected me in ways no other album ever has, and that's all thanks to how layered and frankly heartbreaking the lyrics are. Damon Albarn has always been my all-time favorite lyricist due to his unique songwriting style and the emotions he always brings to the table, but this album's on a whole different level in terms of how emotionally raw and devastating it is. When I really started to dig into the lyrics of this album, I saw it as much more than I did initially and realized that this might be Damon's best album, at least lyrically, right beside Maryland and Park Life, and I can say that in full confidence. The Ballad of Darren is one of the best things he's ever made in terms of lyrics, so I wanted to go into the lyrics of the album and give my interpretation what they all mean. This song immediately clues you into the fact this is going to be a breakup album, and I really do mean immediately. The very first line of the song is, "I just looked into my life, and all I saw is that you're not coming back." Starting the album on such an emotionally low note is meant to show that Damon is on full display on this record. He isn't beating around the bush, being too metaphorical, or using any characters like he does in some other songs. He's letting us into his emotional state after losing the love of his life. A parallel can be drawn between this song and the opening track of 13 in terms of the themes. As a matter of fact, the entire album kind of parallels 13 due to them both being about heartbreak, but while 13 is more confused and angry, the Ballad of Darren is more jaded and depressed. It's really interesting to see a type of breakup album a 31-year-old wrote as opposed to the kind of album a 55-year-old wrote. In any case, the ballad serves as a perfect way to start the album, as it introduces you to the themes that will be present throughout it. It's supposed to be that realization that this really is the end and there's no salvaging the relationship, and the wonderful times you share with that person are now just sad memories. The song itself is beautiful as well, especially with that string section which is incorporated throughout the entire album and really gives it a cinematic feel. And that outro is one of the most gorgeous parts of any Blur song ever. If I could describe this song in one word, it would be anxious. St. Charles Square is essentially about anxiety and regret, and it personifies these two emotions as supernatural entities, haunting you and dragging you under. The idea of ghosts representing regret comes back later in the album in a very big way, but it really gives this song in particular a sinister and really horror-inspired vibe, which is definitely helped by the distorted guitars and the haunting screams that take place throughout the track. This is also a rare Blur track to feature profanity, as it starts with Damon stating, "I fucked up," which is a really striking way to start the song and really puts you into the intense atmosphere it creates. So in the first verse, he essentially states that he'll take responsibility for whatever he's done to lead to this point, but he refuses to take 100% of the blame. He fucked up, but he's not the first to do it. And the chorus is where we really start to get that horror imagery as he sings, "There's something down here and it's living under the floorboards. It's grabbed me around the neck with its long and slender claws." He then pleads with his ex-lover to not leave him for fear of not getting back to himself at all, which I think is a way of saying he'll never truly feel like himself again after the separation. A part of him will forever be lost. There's more horror imagery throughout the track as Damon describes the room shrinking around him and being dragged to the underworld by this entity, and all this imagery is meant to create the feeling of being completely overtaken by anxiety and having no other option but to succumb to it. And the cryptic way the song ends with Damon cutting off mid-sentence may imply that he was killed by this entity, which is a really bold way to end the track, but it works insanely well. 'Cause every generation has its gilded pulses with This is the most upbeat and catchy pop song on the record, as well as having some of the saddest lyrics. The juxtaposition of having super depressing lyrics over a happy-sounding instrumental has been a staple of Damon's music since the 90s, but Barbaric is where I think it's done best, with it being one of the catchiest sing-along choruses he's ever written. Barbaric is about falling out of love with someone who's been your rock for years, or losing the feeling you thought you'd never lose. It conveys a sense of feeling lost and directionless and losing what you've grown so accustomed to. Each chorus uses different pronouns, which gives the song a sense of progression. The first chorus uses I, the second uses you, and the final chorus uses we. And this is honestly one of the most clever choruses Damon's ever written, as it evolves as the song goes on to one final declaration that basically says we aren't in love anymore and there's nothing we can do about it. This song was apparently inspired by Damon spending Christmas alone last year, presumably not long after the breakup, and that's most apparent in the bridge, where the cold and lonely atmosphere is most prevalent. Barbaric is a real achievement in terms of both the lyrics and the song itself, especially at the end when those strings come in and Damon starts belting that final chorus.
Now where are we going? Where are you now?
Russian String strays ever so slightly from the breakup theme, but it still fits the album in terms of tone and atmosphere. The song was inspired by a trip Damon took to Russia right before the invasion and the atrocities that had been committed during the Ukraine war. Now, I know basically nothing about this war, so I'm not going to get too much into it, because I don't think people who are uneducated in a topic should dissect that topic in a video essay, but that's just me. The war seems to serve as a backdrop to the song as it grapples with themes of questioning one's mortality and trying to numb yourself with substances to cope with the atrocities happening right outside your door. The chorus especially displays a sense of apathy and resignation, as it says, "There's strings attached to all of us. There's nothing in the end, only dust. So turn the music up. I'm hitting the hard stuff." This part has always been really striking to me due to how heavy it is. Russian Strings may not directly be about heartbreak, but that theme definitely serves as a backdrop for the overall feel of the track. Amazing song, and Graham's guitar solo at the end is a real highlight.
You of grace.
Now, this was the only song I wasn't quite as into when I first heard the album. I didn't dislike it by any means, but I thought the song was just okay. I thought the acoustic guitar and string section were really pretty, but didn't really connect with me like the other tracks did. That was until I really started to dissect the lyrics and what they really meant, and that completely changed how I look at the song. The Everglades continues the themes of regret set up in St. Charles Square, and even personifies them in a similar way by describing them as ghosts in your mind. The first verse portrays the feeling of looking back at past decisions and wishing you had taken a different path that wouldn't have led to where you are now, broken and alone. But then the lyrics take a shift and appear to be slightly more hopeful. They describe an ideal place of being where calmer days will arrive and things will get better. We stay in this sense of hope for a bit, but then Damon pulls the rug from under us by admitting how he truly feels. Furthermore, I think it's just too late. And that's how the song ends. This part absolutely broke me when I really understood what it meant. Damon spends a good amount of the song trying to stay hopeful that things will get better and he'll get over this heartbreak. But despite everything, he knows deep down that he's only deluding himself. And it really is too late.
Looked in the mirror.
The Narcissist was the first single released for this album, and I immediately fell in love with it and remains my favorite song on the album to this very day. This is one of the less depressing songs on the album, and I wouldn't really call it happy, but it does convey a sense of triumph and perseverance. It's honestly a really cathartic song to come right after the Everglades, and it continues some of the themes set up in that track. The song was inspired by a synthesizer that Damon owned as a teenager called the Transcendent, which is mentioned in the first verse. In an interview, he describes looking at himself in the mirror as a kid with a strobe light shining in his room while playing his synthesizer, which is mentioned in the chorus. The track is about self-reflection, pun very much intended, and looking back on your past self and using those mistakes you made as a way to be better in the present. We explore a lot of Damon's young life on this track, his early days with Blur, his past egotism in the music industry, his past drug addiction, and in the chorus he says he won't fall this time, meaning he won't keep repeating these self-destructive patterns and will try to become a better person. The third verse is the most hopeful verse on the track and likens back to the themes of the Everglades. Overall, The Narcissist serves as a sudden burst of light in an album full of darkness, and that to me is what makes it so cathartic.
Goodbye.
It's fitting that we follow up one of the only hopeful songs in the record with the most depressing song Blur has ever written. Goodbye Albert is definitely the lowest point on the record. Not in quality, in fact this is one of the best tracks on the album, but in terms of emotion, this song is as sad as it gets. Most of the sad songs Damon writes have a tinge of hope to them, but there is none to be found in Goodbye Albert, just resignation to the sadness. This song is about the struggle of letting go of someone you once held dear and the transition between them being the most important person in your life to being nothing but a stranger. There's a metaphor where this person is described as a parasol, which could mean that Damon was shielded from the rain or the depression when he was with them, but now that they're gone, he's once again susceptible to it. The chorus is absolutely devastating as Damon says, "I stayed away, I gave you time, why don't you talk to me anymore, don't punish me forever," which is probably the most raw lyric he's ever written. The sense of confusion and frustration really brings the point home of how hard it is to say goodbye. My first impression of this song is that it sounds like a Good, the Bad, and the Queen song that would fit perfectly on Maryland, and I still hold that position today. I mean, even Dave's drumming is reminiscent of Tony's. But yeah, this is yet another sad track. The imagery of an island is far from new territory for Damon, but the way it's handled on this track is definitely unique. The song uses the metaphor of sailing away from an island to describe two people gradually growing apart from each other. This is probably the prettiest track on the album and has the best use of the string section, especially in that bridge. I mean, wow, it's gorgeous. The verses of the song really convey feelings of loneliness and isolation as it describes Damon watching the sunset and thinking about how much he's lost. He wonders what his past lover is doing now and questions if they've already moved on and found happiness somewhere else, as I sail further away from you. The song isn't all doom and gloom, however, as the last line of the chorus states that despite the fact that he still misses them, he isn't going to get caught up in the sadness and self-pity anymore, which I think is a nice sentiment.
What's the point in building Avalon?
A few years ago, Damon moved to a farmhouse in Devon, or in other words, he now lives in a house, a very big house in the country. He stated that it gets really lonely out there on the countryside, however. You don't really have any neighbors and you're surrounded by mountains and trees as far as the eye can see, so you have to get used to being by yourself, alone with your own thoughts. That's essentially what Avalon is about, Avalon being a mythical paradise from old folklore. It's about having to live in your dreams once you achieve them and questioning what the point of it even was if you still can't find happiness. What's the point of building Avalon if you can't be happy when it's done? There are also hints of the breakup in the song as well. There's a really nice brass section during the verses, but the chorus is where it gets really intense, both musically and lyrically, as it describes how hectic the world around him has gotten, and it also describes substance abuse. That I overdo my dose and I don't even know I'm here anymore. It's just something that comes to us all. The Heights will definitely go down as one of Blur's all-time best closers, along with the likes of This Is a Low and No Distance Left to Run. This song is beautiful and very touching. After an album full of hardship, The Heights serves as both a very emotional but also very triumphant song about forgiveness, moving on, and possible hope for the future. To me, this song is about those fleeting moments of happiness and how quickly they go away. It's essentially a song about mortality and how if you blink, you'll miss the most important parts of existence. That's especially apparent in the lyrics, "Are we running out of time? Something so momentary you can't even feel it." This is the perfect way to close this album, and it makes for a very bittersweet ending. Then the song ends with a wall of static and guitar feedback, which I think is meant to represent how quickly life goes by, then it just abruptly ends. It's heavy, but it's also beautiful. So yeah, that's my interpretation of the Ballad of Darren. As you can tell, this album means a lot to me. There's also 3 bonus tracks, The Rabbi, The Swan, and Sticks and Stones, which are also really good songs. I just didn't cover them because I wanted to stick to the main tracks. I might eventually cover 13 by Blur because it tackles very similar subject matter as the Ballad of Darren, so let me know if you, will be interested in that.